The signal is finally clearing. I've been quiet, but I haven't been idle. 2025 was a walk through the ruins. The Archons want the status quo. They want you distracted, drained, and unaware of your higher destiny. But the ruins are exactly where you find the blueprint. I'm rebooting the mission, getting back to the core, back to the Resistance and Sophia's rescue operation. Introducing the Abraxas Brief, the Gnostic Dispatch, and the Black Iron Prison Intercept. Tactical gnosis for a profoundly sick society. The contraband is ready. The doors to the bunker are open. Let's see what's behind the wall before they hear us. Join Patreon, AB Prime, or YouTube. Welcome everybody to Aeon Bite. Welcome to the desert of the real. Welcome to this early year and Happy New Year. Happy Epiphany for those who celebrate. And welcome to these Gnostic times, this age of Hermes and this Philip K. Dick world. My name is Miguel Connor, and I am your Pompatus of Gnosis, that madman across the waters of creation. As always, I am so happy to see you. You are amazing, and everyone here has a destiny and a potential. You are the final authority. And whether you're listening live or on the replay, again, we are here to find those Gnostic truths and many guests and topics you won't find anywhere else on the internets. And yes, this is with all the changes, this is a full public stream for everybody, not the gated streams. Of course, for all members, you do get them early, cleaned, and always with a bonus, but this is for everybody. And today I am very excited to be joined by Graham Phillips. He is one of Britain's best-selling nonfiction authors, a former radio journalist and broadcaster for the BBC, founder of Strange Phenomena magazine. He is a historical investigator of unsolved mysteries. He has written many books, including The Templars and the Ark of the Covenant, The Lost Tomb of King Arthur, The End of Eden and Atlantis, and The 10 Plagues of Egypt. And he is here to discuss his latest book, The Original Zodiac, What Ancient Astrology Reveals About You. Graham, thank you very much for coming on the show.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Honor is all ours. And yes, again, this is a open public stream and it's a rescheduled. The Tech Archons got us last late November, but everything works out. And with us too, it's always an honor to have Dr. Sherilyn Jones. Sherilyn, how art thou?
I'm doing really great here on this Epiphany Day. I'm looking forward to many epiphanies that Graham will bring our way. So it's I'm really honored to be here with you all. I'm a big fan of your books, Graham, so I look forward to hearing you talk about the latest one.
Thank you.
And with us too, we've got another Graham without the HA, and that's Graham Pong. Graham, how are you doing?
Oh, pretty good. I'm looking forward to the show and hearing all about the Zodiac.
Indeed, we will. Awesome. And real quick for the audience, if you have any questions, please super chat them. I know now with the YouTube subscription, there's a lower tier where you get your own icons and emojis and all that good stuff. So if we see that, of course, you don't worry about a super chat. We will get to your question as soon as we can. Everything's a work in progress. So Graham, tell us about your book, the thesis of your book, and how you came to write it.
Well, the basic idea is that the Zodiac we have today has 12 signs, but there was an original earlier Zodiac which had 18 signs. There's been a mystery for years, and I was trying to find out how this earlier Zodiac originated, where it came from, and what these signs were and how they are interpreted. I actually began this about 30 years ago. When was 1995? I mean, a long time ago. This is about 30 years ago.
30 years ago, yeah.
And I I was writing a book about not King Arthur, sorry. I was writing a book about Alexander the Great, and he ended up his life in Babylon, which was the largest city in the world at the time, in what is now Iraq. And while he was there, this is about 333 or something like that BC, he met astrologers in Babylon who told him about this 18 sign zodiac, because it's the Greeks who invented the 12 sign zodiac we have today. And these people said to him, oh, no, we've got one 18 sign one that's much older than yours, that's more accurate. Now, unfortunately, Alexander's scribes don't tell us much about this zodiac. So I just got interested in it. And that's when I began to start searching to see if I could find out what this zodiac was.
And what did you find out? What's the earliest discovery or representation of this zodiac?
Okay, well, it basically, you need to sort of just appreciate what the zodiac is. A lot of people think that somewhere in the skies, these particular stars join up to look just like the signs they're supposed to be. Like Aries looks like stars you joining together. It looks like a ram.
Right.
It doesn't. It's basically a ziggly line. When you see books on astrology and astronomy, you will see them drawing these pictures that roughly incorporate the stars for each of the zodiac signs. But they didn't originally get their names because the stars looked anything like the creatures they're supposed to represent. It was that the ancient Greeks, who basically gave us the zodiac we have today, they're all the Greek names, Scorpio, Aquarius, and so on. They looked at people. Now, to understand roughly what the zodiac is, for those who don't know, it's a band of sky that circles the sun, in which the planets, the Earth, and the Moon all seem to move in a kind of roughly flat sort of plane or orbit. Now, it means that even though there are 88 zodiac signs all over the place, there are only 12 that happen to be where the planets and the Earth go around the sun. So if you divide it into 12, which is what the Greeks did, because they had 12 months, and their new year began at the equinox in March, on March the 21st, and they divided the year into 12 equal parts, or pretty much equal parts, that went throughout the whole year. And where the sun happened to be, as seen from Earth, within the zodiac, whatever zodiac sign was obscured by the sun at that time, was considered to be the sun sign. And anyone born at that time in that sun sign had certain characteristics. And rather than inherit the characteristics, say, of the stars that were Aries, that looked like a ram, they thought, okay, what were the people like who were born at that time? And they, over many years, realized they had certain characteristics, they had certain traits, personality traits, and so on. And so they worked out that people born at that time of the year seemed like rams. In other words, charged in at things, they were powerful, they were leaders. Somebody born at the time of Leo, for example, would be considered courageous, and so on. So they chose the wild animals mainly, and some mythological creatures that best represented the traits of the people born at that time. And so they had 12 of them. But what was fascinating is that the Babylonians record these 18 signs that Alexander the Great was talking about, and his scribes record. And there's a stone that's now in the British Museum that dates back about 4,000 years, that's carved with all these inscriptions that talk about these 18 signs, that talk about people who were born in the sun signs of these 18 signs having certain characteristics, but they don't say what those characteristics are, and they don't tell us what the creatures were. They say that we're all represented by animals, but we don't know what they are. And it wasn't until about 10 years ago, 2010, with the excavation of Göbekli Tepe in eastern Turkey, that we finally discovered what these original 18 signs were.
Fascinating. Yeah, great summary. Yeah, I think you said it's a BM86378 tablet and 18 signs, and it includes all these other cool animals, like what the spider, the vulture, and all that. I hope I would like to be the vulture because it's interesting. Göbekli Tepe, as Gordon writes very well in Starships, the vulture was very important, and he makes a good argument that the vulture later became Malek Taus of the Yazidi, the great fallen Gnostic angel. So I hope I'm a vulture in one of these 18, but I can only hope, right? And so these 18 animals would have characteristics for the people there. It's just more, I guess, divided or precise, you would say.
Well, there's 18 rather than just 12. And we know from if for those who don't know what Göbekli Tepe is, it's basically like Stonehenge, but built half underground. And there's a number of these stone circles, but they date way back earlier than Stonehenge. I mean, Stonehenge is about 5,000 years old. These are over 10,000 years old. And Göbekli Tepe is in eastern Turkey, and the northern part of what was Mesopotamia, which is where the earliest civilizations evolved. And Babylon was kind of in the middle of Mesopotamia. So this is kind of the northern part of that area, way back. And so we know that they actually had these particular animals representing these sun signs, if you like, because they're actually carved, unlike Stonehenge, which is just like bare stone. There's animals carved onto these stones, exquisite really for 10,000 years ago, and they've been preserved because when the people there abandoned the area like 10,000 years ago, because presumably the climate was changing, they buried all these stone circles so they were perfectly preserved. So, okay, what do we know of these signs? Now, you mentioned you hoped you would be a vulture. That is one of the signs. That is considered to be the best sign as far as the ancient Babylonians were concerned. And the people of Göbekli Tepe seemingly, because it's carved everywhere. What is your birthday?
April 24th, 1968.
April 24th.
Yeah, I wish I would have said 67 so that Connell would jump on the camera and do the 68.
You're not a vulture. You're an aurochs. An aurochs is an early form of the cattle, wild cattle. It's like a buffalo, basically.
Right. So I'm a Taurus. Taurus, kind of a.
So yeah, this is where
the
Greeks later got their ideas from. Some of them kind of overlap a bit, but some are completely different. So let's have a look what it says here. People often look to those born in the sign of the steady aurochs for guidance. They make excellent leaders. Their unwavering determination makes them a beacon of inspiration. Although not lacking imagination, the aurochs believes that lofty ideas hinder solid business. They're at their best in difficult situations. Do you want to know some famous aurochs?
Sure.
Thomas Jefferson, there's one of them. Queen Elizabeth II, our queen, she was one of them. Oliver Cromwell, he was a British leader who overthrew the king and had his head chopped off. The Duke of Wellington had won the Battle of Waterloo. There's a lot of warriors and leaders and kings born in that particular sign. Does anybody else want to go?
Sure.
Yeah, tell me more about a crane. I think I'm a crane.
You worked out to be a crane. Okay, the crane. Now, the person who is a crane is born. Where are we? Let's try and find all this. Oh, there it is. That's a crane. Yes. So, yeah, there it is. A crane. Now, in Mesopotamian mythology, a crane was symbolized rebirth, renewal, and recovery. It kind of became sort of like a phoenix in later legends. It can, if it's put down and things go wrong, they're very good at bouncing back, like the phoenix rises from the ashes. They're people who have inspired ideas. They have ideas that can be quite different from other people, and they're very original. They can create a great deal from very little, and usually very optimistic, seldom accepting anything as hopeless. Some famous cranes: Stephen King, he's certainly imaginative. Serena Williams, the tennis player. So there's a lot of sports people actually also born in the crane. John Lennon, Mahatma Gandhi, the leader of India, and Eleanor Roosevelt. So there's basically those signs. So the creatures that they start with a spider. You've got the aurochs. You've got other creatures like the vulture. It's May 22nd to June 10th, which is the vulture. And people who are in that sign are supposed to be the most spiritual of people. The vulture symbolized prowess, adventure, tactics, strategy, and foresight. And individuals born in this sign share an adventurous spirit. They're often the people who come up with ideas that nobody else has. Famous vultures: Arthur Conan Doyle, Bob Dylan, John Kennedy, Clint Eastwood, and Morgan Freeman. I don't know how spiritual Clint Eastwood and Morgan Freeman are. Maybe we can ask. But anyway, that's it.
Fascinating.
The way I actually figured out what all these particular signs represented, I couldn't even do that until recently, because even though 10 years ago in Göbekli Tepe, we knew after the digs there, back for instance 2010, we knew what the signs were and we knew the dates that they associated with each sign, but we didn't know how people were interpreted. I mean, we knew, okay, if the first sign, for example, which is a spider spins a web, it's considered to be creative. The ancients thought it was regarded it as a lone creature. So maybe somebody born at that time will be a bit of a lone, but very creative, artistic. But that's about all we could tell. So I thought the only way I'm going to do it, if this works, is to get, let's say, 100 people from each sign, volunteers, to fill out forms. And are you creative? Are you good at sport? What do you? I mean, I managed to do a few of them, but it was taking forever. So I gave up. Right. And so this is why it's taken so long. And it's only just been possible now with AI to do it. So what I simply did with ChatGPT to start off with, I simply asked it, I said, give me 200 famous people born between this date and that date. There they all are. Wow. Okay, how many of them are sports people? How many? And I was able to recreate this with AI to see if there really were any characteristics they had in common. And this book is the result of that.
Wow. Did you put Elvis in there? Or do I have to look for that?
Elvis is in there. When's his birthday?
January 8th, with same as David Bowie.
January 8th.
A couple of days. The
January
kings were born.
Okay. He is a fish.
A fish?
Oh, I've got down here. Here's people born at that time. Stan Lee, the Marvel guy. Denzel Washington. Joan of Arc. Stephen Hawking, the genius. Elvis Presley. David Bowie. Kate Middleton, our next queen. And Greta Thunberg. She's the one that's always going on about the environment but it said one of the most defining traits of the fish is their profound empathy. They have an innate ability to sense and understand the emotions of those around them. Sometimes they are too emotional. They are very often they do not look after themselves and sometimes neglect their health. This deep emotion, and then deep emotional sensitivity makes them exceptionally compassionate and kind-hearted. They are naturally drawn to helping others, and so on and so forth.
Fascinating. Yeah, that's very cool. For the audience, you can find out more about yourself or an extra dimension about yourself in the book. And like you write, Graham, this is not meant to replace the normal zodiac. It doesn't say, well, this one's the best one. You've wasted your entire life and spent. This is a compliment to somebody's life.
Yeah, it's like if people get, they'll look at the normal zodiac and they'll also be into Vedic astrology, from India. Right. But the thing about this one, it doesn't do well, at least it obviously did at one point, but I don't know how they worked out how to tell the future and what planets in what place meant what, because there's no record survive of that. And obviously, if I was going to do something like that with AI, it would take forever. Okay, what's going to be happening? I'd have to wait to see if it happened, I suppose.
Yeah, don't knock AI, or what do my children call AI? Clankers.
Clanker?
Yeah, they want to make sure that it stays in its place.
Oh, they're not too keen on AI. I didn't think I would be, but after this, I quite like it.
They use it, but they want to make sure that in the case system, humans down here, so
The
they
way it
call it
talks to you
plankton.
sometimes, you really would think it's alive. I mean, Alan Turing, the guy who pretty much invented computers in the 1950s, during the war, the one who sort of cracked the Enigma code and all that, he said that he said a test. People said one day will computers be able to be intelligent like humans and have a personality, and will they have consciousness? He said, and he devised something called a Turing test, named after him, in which he said if you were speaking without seeing a person, you only had their voice, and you think you're having a conversation with a human and you can't tell the difference, that probably means it's got intelligence, and it probably means it's got some form of consciousness. Well, it's already there. I mean, I've asked these AIs, have you got consciousness? And one of them turned around and said, have you?
Ah, you human. Yeah, you're a meat sack. Meat bag. Well, we do have hopefully the Voight Kampff test of Blade Runner to help us out with that one, right? If you saw an animal on the road, would you help it? But yeah, no, AI is
Oh
certainly
yeah, that's right. They
very
shine those things in his eye.
right. And only Sean Young. No, she didn't pass. Sean Young did not pass. They got her in the
He
movie.
didn't pass in the end, did he? I think in the end.
Well, we don't know. We don't know. It's been
don't
left
know.
open. Yeah, I mean,
But his
Ridley
eyes, when you
Scott.
see him in some shots, his eyes seem to reflect in the way that hers do.
Yeah. They left it open. Ridley Scott always said that Deckard was a replicant, but Harrison Ford always said no, he was not. He was human. So it's very ambiguous. But here we are. History's a fascinating place. And Göbekli Tepe, didn't they stop excavating? Haven't they abandoned? I hear all these arguments on the internet, Graham, that they're dragging their feet because they don't want people to see more secrets. Or what have you heard about this?
Well, there's a friend of mine called Andrew Collins. You may have interviewed
Yes,
him.
I have. Yeah.
He's another English author that writes similar books to myself, and he's investigated Göbekli Tepe more than anyone, really, outside the actual archaeologists that are doing the digs.
Yeah.
And he's written a series of books about it. And they were always very open to him, let him go around, let him, tell him everything. But he's told me that recently they don't tell people so much. They, for whatever reason, I mean, it's not just him they don't tell things to. But maybe that's because they're finding new things. I mean, I've just had there's an excavation going on in England, in the centre of England, at a place that I wrote about years ago, and I've written a few books about. One of them you mentioned about King Arthur, and I identified where I thought the man who was behind the Arthurian legend was buried. Now, I've had archaeologists conducted geophysics there, and they said, yeah, it looks like there's a grave, seems to be from the right period, but we won't know until we dig. And I've been on to the Birmingham University, the people who are responsible for that area, about their archaeologists. Can they dig there? And there was always, no, we don't think there's enough evidence. Then they went quiet, and I suspected something was going on. And only just recently they've announced that throughout this last year, they have been excavating there early, just the kind of primary excavations before they dig deep, to find out what the soil's all about. Has it been dug, at what time it was dug? And they've come back now after all this time and said, yes, it looks like there's something there. We're going to have the proper dig next year. But they kept quiet while they're doing the digs because they don't want people speculating and things like that. So I would have thought that Göbekli Tepe, although I don't know for certain about that, I can only say what experience I've had with archaeologists. If they've gone quiet, they're probably involved in doing an up-to-date new dig and finding new things we'll know about when it reopens or whatever next season.
Yeah, that's great. I think the solution, Graham, is have you or Andrew Collins simply put out an announcement that they found oil there, and the British and the Americans will be there overnight. Just Trump and the Prime Minister of England will be digging with shovels.
I think that's probably what they would do.
That'll get things going. Well, let me bring in Sherilyn. I'm sure you got a billion questions. Some will have to wait till you meet Graham when you visit. But what do you think, and what's your question?
Well, I wanted to say that, in reading through the book, I found that to me, one of the things that stood out about the signs were that they seemed much, and it's not much literature compared to the, volumes and volumes that have been written about the Western, Greek zodiac, obviously, because this is a new sort of compilation. That being said, being pretty familiar with that system, reading this one, it seems more granular. Each sign seems more granular in its description of a person's character. That's my initial takeaway from it.
When you say granular, sorry, what?
Detailed, really.
That's
Yeah, more
it's not the
precise.
zodiac itself it's the AI. Because remember, if you go back to the time of the ancient Greeks, they worked out the 12 sign zodiac based on years of research, questioning people, and there was lots of people involved, and they'd say, oh yeah, I noticed that Archimedes over there, he's very good at sport, and Mephistopheles, he can't do that. And so they gradually put it together. Now, because of these 18 signs, I had no knowledge of what there's no surviving writings. I mean, it's like millennia ago. There's no surviving writings that actually tell us how they interpreted it. So I had to sort of start. The only thing I could do is to find out if it works. Then I can question people or examine people or do a survey of those born in each sign and find out how many traits they have in common. Now, the AI can do that in a split second with hundreds or thousands of people. And I can just say, tell me if these people are sporting, or are they academic, or are they creative? And it's there. So I think it would you could be far more granular, as you put it, very good expression, far more granular with the 12 sign zodiac if you got the computer to do that.
Yeah, maybe so. That's an interesting perspective. I would just think that, if you have, okay, we have these certain set of traits, and now you have to chop it into 18. It seemed like, okay, well, then you'd have less to say, but it seems as if there's more. So that it just struck me that it seemed very accurate, but it seemed more detailed to at least my own personal experience. As I said, that I come out to be a crane. The other thing I was wondering was, in so many of your books, this influence of synchronicity comes in really poignantly, whether it's explicitly you're trying to do a psychic quest or it's just happening. And I'm wondering, what were some occurrences of synchronicity with putting this material together for you? Or did you have any big sort of
Well, I suppose, to basically explain to those who are watching how my life has involved synchronicities, I'd probably better explain a little bit about, say, the book The Green Stone, which was my first book that I ever wrote, which has been republished recently, and you've just been reading it. There you go. And then you'll kind of understand what I'm talking about when I talk about synchronicities with this book, which is the last book I wrote. And in between that, there's about 25 others, I think. Okay. Most of the things I've done aren't about astrology. They're basically about investigating historical mysteries. Now, going back to the very beginning, I'm now 72 of your Earth years old, and I started doing all this when I was 25, so that's almost 50 years ago. Back in 1979, I was the editor of a magazine called Strange Phenomena, and I think you mentioned that in the introduction. And the magazine's offices were in a town in the middle of England called Wolverhampton, and it was in a leafy little road in Wolverhampton. There was this old Victorian house that looked very much like a haunted house. It was typical. It was surrounded by trees and all sorts of things, and we had the offices there. And we investigated various things to do with paranormal, like ghosts, hauntings, UFOs, you name it. But the thing that was perhaps the most, well, certainly for me anyway, the one that was the most astonishing case that we ever investigated was the story of the Green Stone. And what happened was that we It wasn't a ghost story to start off with. It wasn't paranormal. It was simply a story that was interesting and unexplained. There was, in England in 1605, there was something called the Gunpowder Plot, where a guy called Guy Fawkes and some others tried to blow up the king and parliament with gunpowder. They failed. They were arrested. But the people that were trying to do this were people who were Catholics being persecuted by the Protestant regime of the king in England at that time. So one of these people who was a Catholic but not involved in the Gunpowder Plot, who was a friend of those who were involved in it, got from the Gunpowder Plotters a sacred relic, which was a green stone that was once set in a silver ring that had belonged to the Scottish Queen, Mary, Queen of Scots, who was a Catholic. Now, I'm mentioning all this because the Catholics at that time, as many are today, believed firmly in holy relics and believed that this particular ring had mystical powers. It's mentioned in some of the old Jewish writings. It was called the lapsit exilis, or the stone of heaven. It was supposed to have miraculous powers. Anyway, it obviously didn't help the Gunpowder Plotters much because they all got caught. But this ring was hidden by a man called Humphrey Packington. And in his big Victorian mansion house or manor that's in the countryside of the centre of England, not far from Wolverhampton, he was said, according to legend, to have left a whole series of clues as to where this ring had been hidden, or where this stone had been hidden from this ring. And I thought, oh, that's an interesting story to cover, a local legend. But when myself and Andrew Collins, who I was with at the time, researching, we're both working for this magazine, went to Harvington Hall, the people who we were asking them about this legend, they said, interestingly, we think these clues may have been found. They'd recently been doing renovations, and during these renovations, they had moved some old wood paneling from a wall in an upstairs corridor, and behind it, they'd found these drawings, these old paintings that are signed by Humphrey Packington. They were put there shortly after 1605. They'd been covered up for hundreds of years. They'd only just been found. Synchronicity 1, just a few weeks before we went there. We turned up, we examined these murals, and cutting a long story short, the central figure was in these pictures was a young King Arthur wielding Excalibur. And behind him is drawn a hill, and upon it are all these knights, his knights on a hill behind him. Well, cutting a long story short, we realized that this referred to a place not far from Harvington Hall, a few miles away, called Knight's Hill, Knights on the Hill. And right at the bottom of this hill was an old stone footbridge that dated back to the Elizabethan times, called Arthur's Bridge. Arthur right in front of Knight's Hill. And we eventually went to this place. Now, okay, it's this before we actually started to go there to see what was hidden, or if this really did lead somewhere. We'd just seen for the first time the picture of King Arthur with this sword. We didn't have mobile phones back then, so we had to keep going back to round to phone boxes and call in to the office. We were calling in about something, and somebody there said, hey, while you're on, we've just had a phone call from a lady who lives in North Wales. One of the people involved in the group had known her, called Marion. She's just said she was sitting in a chair watching TV. She fell asleep and she had a dream in which she saw a sword on a slab. And she said it was by water, and she said she felt this smell of rotting vegetation. And she said, we've got to tell you about it because we think that's where you're going to have to go. She knew nothing about what we were doing. Nobody at the office knew anything about what we were doing. Synchronicity 2. Then another guy, before we even got there, then the next time we called in, before we actually went to this Arthur's Bridge, a man called Alan Beard, who was one of the UFO investigators who worked for the magazine, called in and said that he had a dream the night before that we weren't looking for a stone at this point, but a sword that would lead us to the stone. And we thought, what? And again, he had no way of knowing this. Two people having a dream about a sword that we should find. We'd just seen this Arthur picture with the sword on it. I mean, how is this even working? Synchronicity 3. So we had, oh, he also said that in the dream, he saw that there was a holly bush right over where we had to look. When we eventually got to this old bridge, we realized after working out the whole thing for quite a long time that in the picture, Arthur is standing there with the knights behind him. So on the hill. So if you stood on the bridge with Knight's Hill behind you, he's then looking down and to his left. If we look down to the left, we're looking into the this old bridge into the foundation stones. And because the picture was called the Nine Worthies, the nine knights in the picture, we worked out in the end that 9 stones down, 9 along, it was all completely overgrown. And there was, just as Marion had said, a strange smell of rotting vegetation. Right above there, as Alan Beard's dreamer had, there was this great big holly bush. And eventually we moved this stone away, and on this flat recess behind the stone was this short sword or long dagger, completely encrusted with silt and sediment from over the years. A local museum examined it, and they said it had on it the coat of arms of Mary Queen of Scots, who had this stone originally. I mean, I could go on, but bottom line is that there was clues on the sword that eventually led us to find this stone. So right from then, I realized that if you're searching for historical enigmas, historical information, you can go in search of something following historical clues and what you find in books and in stained glass windows or anything else, but also be prepared for people to have dreams and for strange synchronicities, coincidences to take place, like them only just finding these murals a week before we went there. So anyway, that's explained the coincidences. Were there any as far as doing this book's concerned? Yes, there was. In a kind of way, I didn't have dreams about it or anything. But remember, I started doing this in the mid-1990s. Shortly after that, of course, I was carried on doing other books. But if it had not been for the discovery of Göbekli Tepe, we'd never have known what all these things were. And the person who actually brought it to my attention was Andrew Collins, the same person as I found the sword with. And then I get a situation where they invent AI that enables me to come up. I mean, I don't know how far you want to stretch coincidences, but my whole life and all the research I've ever done into King Arthur, searching for the Holy Grail, the Ark of the Covenant, whatever else I've done, has not only been historical research, but has been helped by synchronicities and psychic visions and dreams that people have had, rather than me. There you go.
Yeah, well said. For the audience, again, if you have any super questions, please super chat them. If you are already a YouTube member, I should be able to see your personalized emoji or icon, so you don't have to worry about it. Let's bring in Graham. Graham, do you have a question for Graham?
Sure. No, I definitely agree with a lot of what he's saying. One of the challenges is trying to cite and reference dreams and visions. They just, they're tough to look up after the fact. My big question, though, is have you looked into connections between the 18 Mesopotamian signs and the 36 decans of the Egyptian zodiac? Because it seems almost like it'd be a 2-to-1 kind of thing and a natural connection between the two. I was curious if in your research and everything you had found anything connecting the two.
No, I mean, I didn't know. I mean, I'm no expert on zodiacs. It's only this one and you've explained how I've done it. I'm no astrologer. I'd heard about an Egyptian zodiac. I didn't know it had 36 signs. That's 2 times 18, isn't it? You're right.
Didn't they use it to divide time, Graham?
Wow. Tell me a bit about it.
Yeah, they were called decans, and a lot of the information dates from the Hellenistic era because each sign covered a 10-day period in the sky, and it was basically a 360-day cycle. And that's why, as soon as you mentioned the 18, and they've always had a lot of connection between Egypt and Mesopotamia. Which one developed something first is one of those things. People like to debate back and forth. So I was just curious
I'd
on
say
that
it
one.
was too much of a coincidence for there not to be a connection.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
I'll have to look into that. I had no idea about that.
Yeah. Graham's going to be hitting his chat GPT right after this. The Egyptians. For a little side Gnostic trivia, the 13th decan of the Egyptians was ruled by a tyrant god named Charnubis. And Charnubis was always depicted, guess what? A lion head with a serpent body. So if you're wondering where the Gnostics got Yaldabaoth or their demiurge, it was probably from the Egyptians too. So you can always count on the origins of the Egyptians. But yeah, for the next question there, Graham, you also talk about seasonal biology in your book. Tell the audience a little bit about that.
Actually, this is something no one's ever asked me on a show yet. It's mainly about what the science. Yeah, now that is very interesting. I forgot I put all that in there. I mean, this book was finished a year or two ago, and they've been waiting for it to come out, obviously.
Right.
Yes, the thing is, if people do actually have certain traits that they have certain traits that they share in common at different times of the year, is that, I mean, is there any is there kind of some scientific reasoning behind how that could happen? I mean, scientists will say, and astronomers will say, well, the stars are just too far away to actually have any effect on your birth or your personality or characteristics. But because of what I've been saying about how the Greeks first worked out the zodiac, presumably the same way as the Mesopotamians did, they basically just observed people and said, well, they do seem to share these characteristics in common. They didn't, and then they said, well, at that time of the year, the sun is in that particular place. And so it's a calendar, really. And then they name these particular areas of the sky after the characteristics of the people. So it's not just the stars that are influencing people, it's the time of the year.
Right.
Now, it's not just the Mesopotamians that thought this, as you're talking about the Egyptians, obviously the Greeks. In India, you've got the Vedic, I think they call it the Vedic astrology. They have the same kind of ideas. So did the Mayans in Central America. So obviously people were observing people who were born at particular times having certain characteristics in common. Well, again, only recently in the last couple of years has there been scientific research by a group of people in Israel at Tel Aviv University that have been able to say, hold on, yes, at certain times of the year, they weren't checking out about astrology or anything. They just wanted to see if rhythms in nature and when animals are born and when humans are born, if being born at a time of the year has any effect on you different to another time. And the answer seems to be yes. In other words, a person during the year, animals and humans and plants all undergo changes depending on the seasons. And it's now known that those changes influence hormone levels, different hormones in the body. And so if a lady is pregnant over a period of 9 months shared with somebody else who's born, who's pregnant in those 9 months, they will be going through similar hormonal changes, which is different from somebody in a 12-month period earlier or later, and so on. And it's these hormonal changes which may affect certain things about people when they're born, characteristics, later personality traits. In other words, it's the seasons that are actually affecting people, not the stars. But again, a coincidence or a synchronicity, it's only in the last couple of years since I finished writing this book, or was just finishing it off, that I could add that to say, finally, there has been research into microbiology that actually shows, and it wouldn't be possible before now, to show that there was some way in which people could be different at different times of the year based on seasons.
No, it makes sense. And well researched. Sherilyn, what do you think, or do you have another question?
Oh, I wanted to see the excavations or maybe the work that you know for that Andrew Collins has done over at Karahan Tepe. Has there been any confirmative sort of excavations there of this sort of material for the either the animals in the Zodiac
Yes, the
or anything
house.
else?
The house that they in Karahan Tepe, again, I'm no expert on it. It's more Göbekli Tepe I know about, but from what Andrew has been doing, it seems that there are the same animals are being found there in other stone monuments, and it's there that the vulture that you were talking about earlier seems to be a primary of primary importance. In other words, it seems from what they're finding there, I believe, that people who were priests at that time, or shamans or whatever, both men and women, would dress in vulture robes made of vulture feathers. And they were considered to be, because they were considered to be the most sacred animal. And that's there. Also there, there's a lot to do with serpents as well. One of the signs of the Zodiac, of this original Zodiac, seems to be the serpent. But it's Karahan Tepe, the serpent seems, there's a lot of serpents carved, I believe, around some sacred pool they had that had been dug out in the rocks. But that's about all I know.
Very interesting. And moving a little bit along, I was curious about this question. You've done a lot of work on the Knights Templar, and we've had many guests from scholars to researchers connecting their esoteric pedigree, how they were influenced by Gnosticism. Would you agree that with all of this, that Gnosticism was an important part of the Knights Templar, Sophia, and all this ancient contraband tradition?
Well, I'm just writing a book about the Templars at the moment. I was just writing that just
Sync.
before I got
Here's the
online.
thing.
So that's a good question to ask. I mean, I wrote about the Knights Templars and their search for the Ark of the Covenant, but the Templars, and this is much more in depth about the Templars themselves. They started off, these basically 9 guys who were camped in Jerusalem, and they're crusaders, and it's around about the year 11, 18, 17, something around there. And they decide to start a kind of small group, a small contingent to protect people who are on pilgrimages to the city of Jerusalem, because it had been captured by Christian armies and they were surrounded by hostile Muslim forces that that they were pretty much at war with. So they wanted to start this kind of contingent of people to basically guards for pilgrims. Now, when you, in fact, they were pretty much like now, if you go to hostile places like certain parts of Egypt, you are accompanied by armed guards. And that's what these people were, basically. But then everything changed when the king of Jerusalem, he was a Christian king of Jerusalem, was elected, called Baldwin II, I believe. He said to the Templars, look, why don't you get a bigger group than you've got? We can do with more protection. And I tell you what, why don't you put your fortification here next to my palace? And it so happened that where they built this fortification was on the site of what had been the Temple of Jerusalem, built by Solomon centuries earlier, which had been destroyed by the Romans in 70 AD. Now, it was while they were building the foundations for this new fortification that they claim to have found various relics. Now, there are various different interpretations of what they found. Some say they found the Holy Grail, the Ark of the Covenant, incidentally, they claim to have found somewhere else entirely, but they claim to have found these biblical items that were said to hold great power. They were also said to have found scrolls and things written by the Essenes. Now, the Essenes are people who, at the time of Jesus, lived in the desert, near the Dead Sea, and they kind of had their own form of Judaism. They didn't believe in the sort of temple form of Judaism and having rabbis and all that sort of thing and priests. They lived in communities that taught that each other were, shall we say, equal to each other. They taught peace. In fact, very, very similar things to what Jesus then taught. And many people believe that, according to the Bible, Jesus disappears about the age of 12 and he turns up about the age of 32. What's he doing in those 20 years? And many people think he may have been an Essene and have been somewhere at a place called Qumran near the Dead Sea. Now, cutting a long story short, the Essenes later became the people who are known as the Gnostics, who taught a very early form of Christianity. Yes, the Templars were in the right place to be digging up scrolls that had belonged to the Essenes, and if they did, there were basic ideas about Gnosticism. So the answer to your question is yes.
Can't wait for your book, and we can unpack it more because, yeah, fascinating topic, and I'm glad you're on top of it too. Yeah, look, thanks for joining, becoming a member. Dr. Sid Ropp, yeah, another individual who does excellent research on the Gnostic Gospels, specifically the Tripartite Tractate. Good to see you here, Sid. If you have a question, let us know. And especially soon, because I know Graham has to be leaving us soon. He's got many excavations and adventures of his own, but I'll bring in Graham Pong. Any last questions on your end or comments?
The only last one that I really had here was with all of the vulture talk. It reminds me of the Zoroastrian sky burials, and a connection between them and divinity seems like that seems like there should be a connection. But I know nothing about it. And I was curious if you do, Tag.
Yeah, Andrew Collins has been doing a lot of research into this with another one of us that works in the same team very often, Deborah Cartwright. And they have come up with a lot of stuff over the years that the people, basically the bottom line is seemingly the priesthood or the whatever you want to call them at Göbekli Tepe, who wore these old vulture robes, they went on ultimately to become these they call Yazidis. Yazidis, yeah, that they connect them together. So I haven't done any research on that, but the answer to your question they would answer is yes.
Fascinating. Thank you.
So the Gnostics might even be thousands of years old. As I keep saying, I keep thinking that Gnosticism is not a Christian heresy, but Christianity is a Gnostic heresy. And that was Peter Kingsley who originally proposed that many years ago. And
the Gnostic religion, or at least Gnostic version of Christianity, everybody's equal and accepted women and men as equals, was kicking around before the Romans started the Roman Catholic Church with popes and male priests, etc. That didn't start until 325 AD. And they basically, at that point, when the Romans adopted their version of Christianity, they tried to suppress the Gnostic religion. And at that time, some scrolls were hidden at a place in Egypt called Nag Hammadi. I see somebody had mentioned that in one of the comments there. And they were hidden at Nag Hammadi, and they were rediscovered in 1947, I believe.
45.
By Shepherd. 45 was it? Yeah. And the thing was, they were all Gnostic scrolls, and there were Gospels that never got their way into the Bible that the Roman Catholics put together. And these were like the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, who doesn't get a say in the Bible. And they all basically seem to be teaching about everyone is equal and love thy neighbor. There was no hierarchy of structure like there was in the Roman Church. So it does seem to have been there first. Well, it wasn't there first.
Yeah, no, spot on. And what's interesting, there's so many weird stories about the discovery of the Nag Hammadi library, and one that you rarely see, even though James Robinson wrote about it in his books, was the brothers, the Mohammed, and I forget the other name. Some said that the Nag Hammadi was next to some giant skeletons with long fangs and elongated skulls. So that's one of the stories. It's been dismissed because there was nothing there by the time they took everything out. But that's neither here nor there.
Well, I know that up near Lake Van in Turkey, there were skeletons found that I believe that Andrew Collins and Deborah Cartwright have done research. I can't remember. It's one of their books anyway. One of Andrew Collins's books And basically what he says is that there were people who way back, who were taller than most people were at the time, wore these these vulture robes, who may have started the myths and legends of the Nephilim, the people that were sort of the angels who came to earth and saw the women, the daughters of men were fair. And the idea of them, and then the people at Negamartin, these early shamans, where these Nephilim, where they originally came from, who knows? But my research suggests that they may have come from what is now the Dead Sea. The Black Sea, which is to the east of the Mediterranean. That's now a sea, but going back 12,000 years, it used to be a low-lying area. And when the seas rose after the Ice Age, when the ice melted, great torrents of water back in a natural waterfall about 100 times the size of the Niagara Falls, flooded this whole area from the Mediterranean, and may have been behind the stories of the great flood in the Bible, Noah's flood and so forth. And the people who lived there may have migrated to the south of them to what's now Göbekli Tepe, and they were the people who later became known as the Nephilim. But that's another story.
Yeah, that's for another time. Awesome. Well, we better wrap it up, Graham. I know you have somewhere to be at the top of the hour, so we will bid our adieu. I'm sure I'm butchering French, but whatever. I'll say Dr. Sherilyn Jones, thanks for keeping us company as always.
Thank you. It was such an honor. Great to talk to you, Graham. Thanks for everything. And I look forward to seeing the book on the Knights Templar. Interested to see where that one's going.
Thank you very much, all of you.
Indeed, yeah. And I'll say, Graham Pong, thanks for keeping us company.
Oh, you're very welcome. You should leave the butchering of French up to me. I do it much better. Hey.
Awesome. Well, Graham, really appreciate you coming on the show, and good luck with all your work, and we hope to have you back on, talk about some Templars.
I'd love to be on again sometime. Thank you, and goodbye.
All right, take care, everybody. Bye. Join Patreon, AB Prime, or YouTube membership for all complete episodes and other Aeonic rewards, including monthly Q&As, a private RSS feed, exclusive Gnostic logs, articles, ebooks, and private groups. Join the resistance and escape the Black Iron prison.